Chapter 16. I edged over on the floor toward Jack, trying to gain a few more inches of separation from Mr. Crumb. I just wished I hadn't been the first in, because then I would have had Jack between me and our captor, as if that would have protected me. We drove along in silence. The only noises were the droning of the engine and the rush of vehicles whizzing past us in the other direction. I could just catch a glimpse of the roofs as they raced past. I tried not to, but I couldn't help looking over at Mr. Crumb. The pistol remained firmly in Mr. Crumb's hand, his shaking hand. Why was he shaking? He was the one with the gun. A gun. Now it was my turn to start shaking. The car started to slow down. Mr. Crumb turned the wheel, and I could tell from the sound of the tires against the ground that we turned onto an unpaved road. We traveled a few car lengths, and then he brought it to a stop. Was this where we were going? There is a chain across the lane, Mr. Crumb said quietly and calmly. Jack, you are to get out and unlock it so that we may proceed. The key is under the large rock behind the post. Jack didn't move. Do as you are told, he said, pointing the pistol at my brother. Jack pushed himself up and onto the seat and then opened the door and started to step out. Attempting to run would not be wise. I would not like to have to shoot you and your brother. My whole body tingled with fear. Jack nodded his head and climbed out of the car. You may sit on the seat now, Mr. Crumb told me. What? There is no need for you to be on the floor. Take the seat. I climbed up and watched Jack. He had pushed the rock aside and was reaching down to get the key. Part of me wanted him to just bolt away while the rest of me was terrified. Mr. Crumb would shoot at him. Maybe we wouldn't be able to escape. Maybe he wouldn't be able to escape. And me, I'd be as good as dead. I moved slightly over again, away from Mr. Crumb. Just behind us, I heard the rush of air as another car passed. I looked over my shoulder. It was already gone. We were no more than a few dozen yards away from the highway. Maybe somebody would see us, or maybe I could get to the road and run for help. The door was beside me, open, ever so close. Maybe I could just... Do not even let that thought enter your mind, George, Mr. Crumb said. I froze in place. Jack fumbled with the lock, and then it popped open, and he released the chain. It fell to the ground with a thump. He came back to the car and climbed back in, landing partly on top of me. I wasn't going to move over. Awkwardly, Jack closed the car door. Mr. Crumb set the car back in motion, and we moved down the long farm lane. The way was rough, potholed, and rutted. On both sides, there was thick brush and trees. We kept going until we came up to a small farmhouse. The little front porch was sagging on one side, and one of the panes of glass in the front window had been replaced by a piece of cardboard. Mr. Crumb stopped right in front of the house, and he turned the car off. Was this where he lived? Please get out of the vehicle. Jack and I climbed out one side while Mr. Crumb climbed out the other and then circled around behind us. Please walk into the house. We started walking. Jack grabbed the screen door and it practically came off in his hand. Only the top hinge was holding it in place. Nice place you have here, he muttered. It is sufficient. Please proceed. Jack pushed open the solid wood door and we walked in. It was immediately apparent that Mr. Crumb didn't live here. Nobody lived here. There were a few crates and a broken chair, but nothing else. Through the door to your right, please, he said, motioning with the pistol. All this politeness would be a lot nicer if you weren't pointing a gun at us, Jack grumbled as he started to walk. There is no reason why this cannot be done politely. I simply need you to answer my questions. Jack pushed through a swinging door and I followed. I had an urge to throw the door back at Mr. Crumb the way they would have done in some sort of gangster movie, but I didn't. I just followed Jack into the room, the kitchen. There was a table and 6 chairs. The counter was covered with dirty dishes, and there was an ice box and a wood-burning stove. Its stone chimney reaching up through the ceiling. Sit, please. Jack took a seat and I sat down on the chair right beside him. It creaked and slumped as I settled into it, and for an instant I thought it was going to give way and collapse. It was wooden and old and badly in need of repair. Mr. Crumb pulled the chair over and turned it backwards. He sat down with his arms and the pistol resting on the back of the chair. Then he looked at his watch. There is little time, and I need my questions answered. We've answered your questions, Jack told him stubbornly. No, you have avoided answering my questions, and I think that is not wise. Your choices are to provide me with answers or be questioned by my associates. Jack and I exchanged a look. Did you think I was working alone? We hadn't thought of anything, I said. Please do not deny that you had some suspicions. It was obvious from your refusal to answer my questions, the manner in which you tried to avoid me, and the way George would chew on the inside of his cheek as he's doing now. I stopped myself. I simply need answers. I have no desire to hurt either of you boys, but if I do not get answers, I am certain that my associates will be neither as patient nor as concerned as I for your well-being. What will happen to us if we tell you what you want to know? Jack demanded. You can't afford to let us go free. If you cooperate, you will be left here tied up. A call will be made tomorrow to inform the police of your whereabouts. and then we'll tell them everything about you, Jack said. You'll be arrested, but you know that. I would expect nothing less. You don't care if they arrest you? I wanted to know. Alas, I will not be here to be taken into custody. So that means whatever you're doing is going to be done before tomorrow, I reasoned. He nodded his head, and a slight smile came to his lips. I was certain that you would make a first-class newspaper man. What are you going to do? Do you really think he'll tell us? Jack said. Mr. Crum shrugged. You will not be able to tell anybody until long after the plan is complete, so I will share it with you. Tonight at 10:30, there will be a simultaneous attack on the German prisoner of war camp in Bowmanville and the DIL plant. The DIL plant? But our mother is... I let the sentence trail off. I don't have to worry. She'd be home by 5 and safe, home and looking for us. Your mother is working the day shift today, Mr. Crum said. How do you know that? Jack demanded. I know the rotation of her shifts as I know many things. I was hoping for your sakes that she would not be present at the time of the attack. Why? Why does that matter? Jack asked anxiously. I should not wish anything to happen to her. You are both fine boys. I like both of you. But if you're attacking those other places, why did you want to know all about the camp? I asked. Ah, that is the next stage of the plan. These sites are being attacked merely to attract attention. The men training at the camp will be drawn off in both directions to offer assistance. It is at that time that the camp itself will be attacked. What's the point in doing that? Jack asked. The camp has been host to a number of very important persons. Tonight, one of the most important men in the Allied forces is there. My eyes widened slightly and I turned to Jack. Was he after Little Bill? From your expression, it appears that you have some knowledge of the person to whom I'm referring, Mr. Crum said. I tried to make my face go blank. Had we given something away? Had he overheard us talking? That information, as much information, is known to me through radio transmissions. All those men who consider themselves master spies and they cannot keep secrets. I know everything. I had no idea how much information he had discovered, but I knew that they didn't even suspect him. I'd been told that if they thought he was a spy, they would have arrested him. His cover as a newspaper editor had worked perfectly. It doesn't matter what you think you know, Jack snapped defiantly. That place is well defended. And how would you know that? I'm not telling you anything. You just try to break in there and see what happens to you. I will not be the only one attacking. There are 3 special teams, each with 6 elite agents. And you're their leader, I asked? Mr. Crum laughed. Far from that. I'm simply a loyal citizen. A traitor is what you are, Jack snapped. Hardly. To fail to act in the defense of my country would be to behave as a traitor. But you told us you were a Canadian, I protested. I am Canadian by declaration, but German by birth. You're nothing but a stinking Nazi, Jack practically yelled. I suggest that you use neither that tone nor the insult when my associates arrive. As I have said, they are less than tolerant than I. He paused. I am a German. I am loyal to Germany, loyal to all my family that remain in that country. When I was contacted, there was no question where my allegiance lay. What about all those things you said about the Nazis being evil? I asked. Simply a way to cover myself. Always look for the one who protests loudest to be the one who is hiding the most. But you even tried to enlist in the army. Why would you do that? Can you not imagine what service I could have been to the German government if I could have become part of the Canadian intelligence or communications? He asked. But enough talk. Mr. Crum stood up. He went to a cupboard, opened it up, and pulled out a long coil of rope. For the safety of us all, it is best that you boys be tied up. I would not wish to have you attempt to escape. The results would be most unpleasant. He put the gun down on the counter and opened a drawer. I gasped slightly as he pulled out a long knife. Sunlight caught the blade and it glittered. He bent down and placed it on the floor, then with his foot slid it toward me. It stopped just a few feet short of my chair. He took the coil of rope and tossed it so that it also landed right by my feet. George, you are to tie up your brother. I'm not going to do that, I stammered, shaking my head. You will do as you're told. I will direct you. I hesitated. Now, he barked. Do what he says, George, Jack told me. I bent over and picked up the rope and then the knife. Mr. Crum directed me to loop the rope around both my brother and the back of the chair, then cut it. The knife sliced easily through the thick cord rope. I was amazed by how sharp it was. Now cut 3 more pieces smaller, perhaps 2 feet in length. Reluctantly, I did what I was told. Secure each of your brother's legs to a leg of the chair. I looped the piece around Jack's leg and started to tie it. I looked up at him apologetically. Tighter, much tighter, Mr. Crum ordered. Sorry, I mouthed to Jack as I pulled the rope much more tightly around him. I finished the first leg and then did the same with the second, snugging the rope in but leaving it as loose as I dared. Next, I tied his hands together behind the back of the chair. Mr. Crum came over. He was still holding the pistol in one hand, but with the other he proceeded to check each loop of the rope. Then he stepped back. Cut 3 more pieces of similar length, he ordered. I knew without asking that I was now going to cut the ropes that would hold me. I did what I was told. Each time the knife sliced easily through the cord. Now sit, he said. I want you to tie both of your legs in the same manner you secured your brother's. I reached out and took the first piece of rope. If it was strange to tie up my brother, this was completely unreal. I pulled the rope until my leg was pressed tightly against the leg of the chair. I put a knot in the end and then double knotted it. I did the same with the second leg. Now put your hands behind your back, behind the back of your chair. I did what I was told, and Mr. Crumb circled around behind me. He bent down. I heard the sound of the gun being placed on the floor and then felt the rope being looped around my wrists. It hurt as he tightened it, and I pulled away. I am sorry, but I cannot loosen it, Mr. Crumb said. When he'd finished, he draped a coil of rope around my chest so that my back was pressed against the back of the chair. He then dropped to his knees and tightened the knots on both of my legs, pulling them until they hurt. Satisfied, he went to Jack and tightened every rope in turn. Any hope that I'd left some slack was gone. Now we may begin to... He stopped at the sound of tires against gravel. There was a car pulling in. My first thought was that somebody was coming who would rescue us, and then I remembered that Mr. Crumb was expecting the rest of his party to arrive. There was the sound of a car door slamming, and then another and another and another. There were a number of people. It had to be the team of elite agents he'd mentioned, Nazis, and they were coming here to talk to us. I couldn't help but think about something we'd said just before the lieutenant colonel asked us to sign the secrecy oaths, how we wouldn't even tell what we knew, even if we were tortured by Nazi agents. Brave words.